Dot Kettle and Georgina Richards are utilising all the attributes of the peony plant in their Dove River business, including flower production and export, teas, creams and soaps. Dot and Georgina moved to their property in the Upper Motree from Wellington in 2008 and established a 10-acre peony field. Dot explains.
Here we are in Dovedale, in Dove River Farm, and we run a property that cultivates peony flowers for export mainly, and we do a number of added value products as well as that. We've got 100 acres here in the Dove Valley, and we have the beautiful Dove River that runs throughout the property. Of that 100 acres, about 40 are on the flat, and just about close to 10 acres is actually in peony plants. 5 years ago we moved here to Dovedale from Wellington, and we decided that actually we were looking for a rural lifestyle property and a chance to actually cultivate something that would actually generate quite a good income earner for us as well over time. So we planted about 10,000 tubers at that time, peony tubers, and they come into fruition, if you like, within sort of 3 to 4 years. They're mature plants and then they're capable to be harvested. Initially, we actually thought we would move here in 5 years when they were ready to go, but a job came up for me here in the Nelson region. It was just too good an opportunity, so we moved here straight away and have been loving it ever since. Peonies are just such a beautiful flower, and they're easy to grow, so you don't need to actually have huge horticultural experience, which we don't have, and so it's easy to grow and something that we both really, really love. We've got about 14,000 tubers now, and we're planning to double that in the next 2 years, so we'll dig and divide in the winter, and along with that expansion in the flowers, we're also looking to grow the use of the peony root. It's had huge beneficial properties, long used both Eastern and European. And so we're going to use those in a range of products. So we've got some soaps, we've got some teas, we've got some creams under development as well. At the moment, we can't live off the earnings of the property itself, so we supplement our income. I've got a full-time job as well at the local Chamber of Commerce, and so running a small business fits very well with that role as well. But over time, we expect that this will actually be able to generate a sufficient income for us.
This variety is a Nick Shaler. They're a sort of late variety in the peony season. And what we're looking for in the buds is we're looking for a bit of colour in the top of the bud. When we squeeze them, they need to be reasonably soft, but not too soft. These flowers could be 3 weeks travel and end up in a florist in America in 3 weeks' time, so they need to be reasonably firm. They get chilled down, that will make them last. So give them a bit of a squeeze. If they're soft enough, we'll pick them. We pick them at 60 centimetre stems, so you've got to go right down to the ground to pick them. That stem will stay 60 centimetres for export. If it's not 60 centimetres, it can't go. You can't have laterals on stems, so generally we go through and we remove these well before harvest, but occasionally you miss some like that one. And these laterals are taking energy from the plant, so the bud will be smaller, so we want to get as much energy into that bud as possible. You want reasonably straight stems. Some varieties are better than others. This variety is particularly good with long straight stems which are really strong, which will hold the weight of the bud because the buds are pretty heavy. The way that we work with export is that flowers are graded depending on size. So these ones here at the moment are probably a AA, and what we're aiming for the top dollar is the AAA size bud. A AAA size bud would be something more this size. And so when we get them back to the pack house, we'll grade them on their size and bunch them accordingly. This is a 3 to 4 year old plant. When we plant it on a ridged row. The reason for the ridging is we get quite good rainfall here, and we're also in a riverbed, an old riverbed, so there's a lot of rocks and there's a really good drainage. So we ridge the rows, plant the tuber. The tuber will, in the first year or two, will only have possibly 1 to 2 stems on it, not very bushy. So 3 to 4 year old plant here, you'd expect to get about 10 stems off it. It likes really free draining soil, not too much nitrogen. Too much nitrogen will give you a huge bushy plant, not a lot of stems. So to counter that, we go with a fertiliser that's a low nitrogen fertiliser which has got high potassium in it. In the Dove Valley, in the winter, our coldest frosts would go down to about -9 degrees. And a peony tuber really needs those frosts in order for the starches to condense. And so it's in its dormant phase then during the winter. When we've chopped the plant off completely, there's no plant above the ground, it's just frozen in the soil. In the summer, it needs really hot temperatures to bring on the stems. So at the moment today, it's about 26 degrees out here. We've got a lot of rocks in the soil. The rocks retain the heat as the afternoon cools down, and those rocks will keep the plant reasonably warm overnight. We don't like using too many sprays. You'll get a lot of growers where there's no grass in the patch at all. We've got 3 little boys, so we don't like to use too many sprays. But what we do have to spray for is for our American certification. So we spray an insecticide against the leaf roller moth and also for thrips. And we also use fungicides because when we pick the buds and we ship them off, we need those buds to not get any kind of mould or any botrytis on them while they're in transit. We bring them in, we've stripped all of the excess leaves off, and then we get them trimmed down to 60 centimetres and in the chiller as fast as we can. Now the chiller's at 2 degrees. These buds, particularly when they're hard, firm buds, retain heat right in the centre of the bud that we need to get cooled down as fast as possible. That'll take about 24 hours to get the buds down to 2 degrees. At that point, they're in a bucket of water, they basically stop maturing, and that's what we're trying to do, is halt that maturing process. So once we've done that, we can take the water out and we can dry cool them in the chiller, and then we'll get them out ready to pack. So all of our stems before shipping have been in the chiller for at least 48 hours. That way we know they're going to retain that cold temperature all the way up to Auckland or wherever they're going to go.
The exciting thing for us was actually finding out more and more about the power of the peony root and finding out that actually it's been used for centuries for its antibacterial, anti-inflammatory kind of properties. This aspect of the business is growing, and actually over time we think this will actually end up being the primary purpose of what we do. So the peony, the flower, is always going to be the hero, and that's what we're most passionate about, that's what we're interested in. So we're not going to be tea producers, we're not going to be soap makers, but we are going to be utilising the beneficial properties of the peony in a range of products. And I think over time, like I say, this will end up being half of the business and probably generating, you know, as much income throughout the year as what we get from the very short peony flowers.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.